1. Islamic State claims responsibility for Paris terror attacks. This topic is important under General Studies Paper 3. Security and Disaster Management, International Terrorism, Linkages of Organized Crime with Terrorism. Why recently in news? The Islamic State terrorist group has claimed responsibility for the series of attacks targeting young concert-goers, soccer fans and Parisians enjoying a Friday night out at popular night spots, killed at least 128 people in the deadliest violence to strike France since World War II. French President François Hollande condemned it as terrorism and pledged that France would stand firm against its foes. The Islamic State released an undated video on Saturday threatening to attack France if bombings of its fighters continue. What exactly IS want from rest of world? In June 2014, the group formally declared the establishment of a caliphate, a state governed in accordance with Islamic law, or Sharia, by God's deputy on earth, or caliph. It has demanded that Muslims across the world swear allegiance to its leader, better known as Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and migrate to territory under its control. IS has also told other jihadist groups worldwide that they must accept its supreme authority. Many already have, among them several branches of the rival Al-Qaeda network. IS seeks to eradicate obstacles to restoring God's rule on earth and to defend the Muslim community, or Ummah, against non-believers of their faith and apostates. The group has welcomed the prospect of direct confrontation with the US-led coalition, viewing it as a messenger of an end-of-times showdown between Muslims and their enemies described in Islamic apocalyptic prophecies. The group though has attracted support elsewhere in the Muslim world, and a US-led coalition has vowed to destroy the IS. Where can we trace back the origin of Islamic State? IS can trace its roots back to the late Abu Musab al-Zarqi, a Jordanian who set up Tawhid wal Jihad in 2002. A year after the US-led invasion of Iraq, Zarqi pledged allegiance to Osama bin Laden and formed Al-Qaeda in Iraq, AQI, which became a major force in the insurgency. After Zarqi's death in 2006, AQI created an umbrella organization, Islamic State in Iraq, ISI. ISI was steadily weakened by the US troop surge and the creation of Sawa, Awakening, councils by Sunni Arab tribesmen who rejected its brutality. Baghdadi, a former US detainee, became leader in 2010 and began rebuilding ISIS capabilities. By 2013, it was once again carrying out dozens of attacks a month in Iraq. It had also joined the rebellion against President Bashar al-Assad in Syria, setting up the Al-Nusra Front. In April 2013, Baghdadi announced the merger of his forces in Iraq and Syria and the creation of Islamic State in Iraq and the Syria, ISIS. The leaders of Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda rejected the move, but fighters loyal to Baghdadi split from Al-Nusra and helped ISIS remain in Syria. At the end of December 2013, ISIS shifted its focus back to Iraq and exploited a political standoff between the Shia-led government and the minority Sunni Arab community. Aided by tribesmen and former Saddam Hussein loyalists, ISIS took control of the central city of Fallujah. In June 2014, ISIS overran the northern city of Mosul, and then advanced southwards towards Baghdad, massacring its adversaries and threatening to eradicate the country's many ethnic and religious minorities. At the end of the month, after consolidating its hold over dozens of cities and towns, ISIS declared the creation of a caliphate and changed its name to Islamic State. How much territory does Islamic State control? In September 2014, the then director of the U.S. National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Matthew Olson, said IS controlled much of the Tigris-Euphrates River basin, an area similar in size to the United Kingdom, or about 210,000 square kilometers, 81,000 square miles. 7 months later, the U.S. military declared that IS had lost about a quarter of its territory in Iraq, equating to 13,000 to 15,500 square kilometers, but that its area of influence in Syria remained largely unchanged, with losses in some areas offset by gains in others. However, these figures do not necessarily reflect the situation on the ground. In reality, IS militants exercise complete control over only a small part of that territory, which includes cities and towns, main roads, oil fields and military facilities. They enjoy freedom of movement in the largely uninhabited areas outside what the Institute for the Study of War calls control zones, but they would struggle to defend them. Similarly, it is not entirely clear how many people are living under full or partial IS control across Syria and Iraq. In March 2015, the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross put the figure at more than 10 million. Inside areas where IS has implemented its strict interpretation of Sharia, women are forced to wear full veils. Public beheadings are common and non-Muslims are forced to choose between paying a special tax, converting or death. What about its targets outside Iraq and Syria? In late 2015, IS began to lay claim to attacks outside its territory. An Egyptian affiliate, Sinai Province, said it downed a Russian passenger plane in the Sinai Peninsula, killing all 228 on board. It gave no details, but the UK and US later said it was likely that a bomb caused the crash, whether or not a bomber was linked to IS. IS also claimed twin blasts in the Lebanese capital Beirut, which killed at least 41 people. Militants from the Lebanese movement Hezbollah have been fighting in neighboring Syria on the side of his enemy, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. And then on the 13th of November, at least 128 people were killed in a wave of attacks around Paris. IS said it was behind the violence. French President François Hollande described it as an act of war. What weapons does IS have? IS fighters have access to, and are capable of using, a wide variety of small arms and heavy weapons, including truck-mounted machine guns, rocket launchers, anti-aircraft guns and portable surface-to-air missile systems. They have also captured tanks and armored vehicles from the Syrian and Iraqi armies. Their haul of vehicles from the Iraqi army includes armored Humvees and bomb-proof trucks originally manufactured for the US military. Some have been packed with explosives and used to devastating effect in suicide bomb attacks. Where does IS get its money from? The militant group is believed to be the world's wealthiest. It initially relied on wealthy private donors and Islamic charities in the Middle East keen to oust Syria's President Assad. Although such funding is still being used to finance the travel of foreign fighters to Syria and Iraq, The group is now largely self-funding. The U.S. Treasury estimates that in 2014 IS may have earned as much as several million dollars per week, or $100 million in total, from the sale of crude oil and refined products to local middlemen, who in turn smuggled them in Turkey and Iran, or sold them to the Syrian government. But airstrikes on oil-related infrastructure are now believed to have diminished such revenue. Kidnapping also generated at least $20 million in ransom payments in 2014, while IS raises several million dollars per month through extorting the millions of people living in areas under its full or partial control, according to the U.S. Treasury. IS is believed to raise at least several million dollars per month by robbing, looting, and extortion. Payments are extracted from those who pass through, conduct business in, or simply live in IS territory under the auspices or providing services or protection. Religious minorities are forced to pay a special tax. IS profits from raiding banks, selling antiquities, and stealing or controlling sales of livestock and crops. Abducted girls and women have meanwhile been sold as sex slaves. Why IS militants destroy ancient sites. IS see ancient cultural heritage as a challenge for the loyalties and legitimacy of Iraqi or Syrian people to IS itself. Destroying such heritage is thus a part of their duty, as they see it, to reject such a nationalist agenda that the statues, temples, and indeed, cities represent. In a wider sense, the IS brand of intolerant Islam motivates it to attack polytheism wherever it is found and to reject the worship, as they would put it, of idols that they see these sites as representing. It is also no surprise to see IS destroying Shia and Sufi sites, and even Sunni shrines. Why is Islamic State so violent? IS members are jihadists who adhere to an extreme interpretation of Sunni Islam and consider themselves the only true believers. They hold that the rest of the world is made up of unbelievers who seek to destroy Islam, justifying attacks against other Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Beheadings, crucifixions and mass shootings have been used to terrorize their enemies. IS members have justified such atrocities by citing the Quran and Hadith, but Muslims have denounced them.